In the 1880s, the world was on the verge of a new age. For all of history, life was ruled by the sun. When the sun went down, the world went dark. One man promised to change that. His name was Thomas Alva Edison. Edison was the most famous inventor in the world. He had invented the light bulb. But he knew the bulb wasn't the real invention. The real invention was the system to power it. He called his system direct current, or DC. It was a simple idea. Electricity flowed from his power plant to your home in one steady direction. In 1882, his Pearl Street station in New York City proved it worked. He lit up a small part of Wall Street. The press called him a wizard. But this wizard had a huge secret problem. His DC system was incredibly weak. The power could not travel. Just 1 mile away from his power plant, the electricity faded and died. His revolution could only light up a single neighborhood. The reason was simple. To push his DC power through wires, the wires had to be enormously thick as a man's arm, and he lost most of his power as heat. For Edison, the only solution was to build a new, massive, coal-burning power plant every single square mile. His system wasn't a worldwide solution. It was just a very expensive, very local one. It could never light up the country, let alone the world. The world needed a better answer. The problem wasn't the light, it was transmission. And this is where a second genius enters the story. A young, penniless immigrant from Europe named Nikola Tesla. Tesla was a visionary. He believed Edison's entire idea was wrong from the start. He had a new, radical concept, alternating current, or AC. Instead of pushing electricity in one line, AC vibrated back and forth. Why? Because this vibration allowed for a magical device called a transformer. A transformer could step up the power to incredibly high levels, allowing it to travel hundreds of miles with almost no power loss. Then a second transformer could step it down to be safe for your home. It was the perfect, elegant solution to Edison's 1 mile problem. When Tesla arrived in America, he went to work for the one man he thought would understand, Thomas Edison. Tesla, full of hope, explained his AC solution to the great inventor. Edison didn't just disagree, he laughed at him. He said Tesla's ideas were impractical and dangerous. This wasn't just a technical disagreement, it was a betrayal. Tesla quit and was soon so poor he was digging ditches just to survive. This is where our story truly begins. It's the story of a war between two very different men and two very different ideas. On one side, Thomas Edison, the most famous man in America, with all the money of J.P. Morgan, fighting to protect his DC empire. On the other, Nikola Tesla, a poor, unknown immigrant fighting for his forbidden idea of AC. This wasn't just a business rivalry. It would become a war of propaganda, fear, and public executions. It was a war to decide who would power the planet. This is the War of the Currents. The man who would challenge the empire of Thomas Edison was born at the stroke of midnight during a ferocious lightning storm in 1856. The village was Smiljan, a remote speck in the Austrian Empire, known today as Croatia. The midwife, seeing the storm, declared, "This child will be a child of darkness." His mother, Juka Tesla, a brilliant and illiterate woman who built her own tools and memorized epic poems, replied, "No, he will be a child of light." His destiny was written in the storm. His father, Milutin Tesla, was a disciplined Serbian Orthodox priest. He was a man of words, faith, and rigid expectations. He intended for his youngest son, Nikola, to follow him into the clergy. But Nikola was not his father's son. He was his mother's. From his earliest childhood, his mind worked differently. It was a cathedral of wonders and a prison of terrors. He was haunted by blinding flashes of light that would involuntarily sear themselves across his vision, often accompanied by vivid, hallucinatory images. He was not just daydreaming, he was designing. He claimed he could visualize entire inventions in his mind with such precision that he could build, test, and deconstruct them right down to the last screw, all without ever drawing a sketch or touching a tool. He would run these machines in his head for weeks, checking for wear and tear before declaring them complete. This unique mind was also a burden. He suffered from an obsessive-compulsive nature, fixated on numbers, especially the number 3. He would demand a stack of 18 napkins, calculated the volume of his soup, and refused to stay in hotel rooms that were not divisible by 3. His life was defined by this internal electricity. His first invention, he claimed, was a bug motor at age 5, powered by June bugs glued to a small windmill. He tried to fly by jumping off his barn roof with a modified umbrella, nearly killing himself. But the defining trauma of his childhood was the death of his older brother, Dane. Dane was the family prodigy, the perfect son, brilliant and athletic. He died in a riding accident when Nikola was just 5 years old. The event left a permanent scar. Nikola was left with the crushing burden of replacing the irreplaceable, of trying to live up to the ghost of a brother his parents considered superior in every way. This pressure, this feeling of inadequacy, would fuel his ambition for the rest of his life. His father, seeing this strange, intense boy, doubled down on his demand for the priesthood. But Nikola, after a near-fatal bout of cholera at age 17, made a desperate bargain. As he lay dying, he told his father he would only recover if he was allowed to study engineering. His father, heartbroken and desperate, finally relented. Tesla, miraculously, recovered. His bargain was sealed. He was sent to the finest school he could find, the Austrian Polytechnic in Graz. Here his genius was unleashed. He was a star. He slept just a few hours a night, devoured the library, and mastered physics and mathematics at a pace that baffled his professors. He spoke 8 languages. His professors wrote letters to his father, warning that this boy was working himself to death. And it was here, in a dusty lecture hall in 1875, that he first saw the machine that would define his life and his rivalry with Edison. The professor, a man named Purcell, rolled out a new device from Paris, a Graham dynamo. It was a primitive DC generator. As the machine ran, the professor demonstrated its capabilities, but also its critical flaw. The commutator, the part that kept the current flowing in one direction, was a mess. It was a ring of metal contacts with carbon brushes that sparked violently, a shower of fire and ozone. The sparks were not just a nuisance, they were a nightmare. They were inefficient, bleeding precious energy as heat. They were a constant maintenance hazard, requiring the expensive brushes to be replaced constantly. And in a world of wooden buildings and gas lighting, they were a terrifying fire risk. Professor Purcell explained this was an unavoidable, if unfortunate, reality of direct current. The professor was not amused. He dedicated an entire lecture to systematically mocking Tesla's youthful arrogance. He proved with chalkboard equations and smug certainty how impossible it would be to create a motor or generator without a commutator. He declared, "Mr. Tesla may do great things, but he will certainly never do this. He is trifling with a perpetual motion machine." For the class, it was a humiliation. For Tesla, it was a declaration of war. The challenge consumed him. It became a holy grail. But his obsession derailed him. In his third year, he discovered gambling. He lost his tuition. He lost his allowance. He became a high-stakes addict, playing cards day and night in a desperate attempt to win it all back. He failed. He never graduated. He dropped out of school ashamed and severed all ties with his family. They believed he had drowned in a river. He drifted, suffering what many historians believe was a complete nervous breakdown. He was a college dropout, a gambling addict, and a failed genius. He was eventually found and forced back home, but the challenge of the sparkless motor remained. In 1881, he found work at the new Budapest telephone exchange. He was a brilliant engineer, but his mind was elsewhere. He was a man possessed. He would walk for hours through the city park, muttering to himself, reciting entire books of poetry from memory, drawing in the dirt. And then, one evening, walking with his friend Anthony Zaghetti, as the sun began to set, it happened. The vision. He was reciting a passage from Goethe's Faust when he was struck as if by a lightning bolt. He froze. His friend tried to guide him to a bench, thinking he had a seizure. "No!" Tesla shouted. "Watch this!" He saw it. Not just an idea, but a revelation as clear as a photograph. A spinning magnetic field born from two alternating currents perfectly out of phase with each other. A cosmic motor. No sparks, no brushes, no commutator. Just pure, silent, elegant rotation. He grabbed a stick and drew the diagram in the dust, the diagram that would change the world. The polyphase induction motor. He said, "See my motor here? Watch me reverse it." This was the answer. This motor was the key. But a motor needs a power source. It needed a system. It needed alternating current. Tesla now had his mission. He had to build the future. His genius was recognized, and in 1882 he moved to Paris to work for the Continental Edison Company. He was no longer a student, he was a star. He was the company's fixer. When a massive new Edison DC power plant in Strasbourg, Germany, failed spectacularly, it was Tesla they sent to fix. He worked day and night, redesigning Edison's flawed dynamos. And in his spare time, in a small workshop, he built his first prototype. He put the AC induction motor on a benchtop, applied the current, and it spun. It worked. He presented his working model to the company executives. They were polite, they were impressed, and they did nothing. They were invested in DC. His invention was too revolutionary. It threatened their entire business model. A manager, Charles Batchelor, a close friend of Edison himself, gave him some advice. He told him the men in Paris were fools. The only place for an idea this big and a man this brilliant was America. Batchelor wrote a letter of introduction addressed to the one man in America who might understand. In 1884, Nikola Tesla arrived in New York Harbor. He was 28 years old. His ticket had been stolen. His luggage was lost. He had 4 cents in his pocket, a book of his own poetry, a few calculations, and that letter. The letter was addressed to Thomas Alva Edison. The meeting of these two men is one of the great what-ifs in history. It was a clash of two universes. Edison, the practical, methodical, self-made American titan. He was a tinkerer, a brute force inventor who famously said, "Genius was 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration." He tested 10,000 filaments to find one that worked. Tesla, the eccentric, visionary, European intellectual. He was a theorist, a poet, who believed perspiration was a waste. He claimed he could build the entire thing in his head, and that 1% inspiration was the only thing that mattered. Edison, surrounded by his muckers in his lab, read the letter from his trusted friend, Batchelor. It was simple. It said, "My dear Edison, I have known 2 great men, and you are one of them. The other is this young man." Edison, gruff and unimpressed by Tesla's fantastical talk of alternating currents, hired him on the spot. He saw a brilliant, if strange, workhorse. Tesla was immediately put to work not on his grand new vision, but on the dirty, grinding, 18-hour-a-day work of fixing Edison's failing DC system. The dynamos at Pearl Street were inefficient. The new generators built for the SS Oregon, the first ship with electric lights, were constantly breaking down. Tesla was in heaven. He was working for his hero. He threw himself into the work. Within weeks, he had completely redesigned Edison's inefficient motors and generators from the ground up, making them drastically more efficient, safer, and more profitable. He was saving the Edison Company a fortune. And this is where the partnership and the future fractures. According to Tesla's autobiography, his work was so good that Edison was stunned. Tesla, still new to America and desperate for recognition, half-jokingly proposed a new system. Edison, annoyed, dismissed him. The tension grew. Tesla, feeling overworked and underappreciated, finally confronted Edison about payment. According to Tesla, the manager, Batchelor, had promised him a bonus of $50,000, a staggering sum, millions in today's money, if he could solve the company's most difficult engineering problems. He had done it. When Tesla went to collect his payment, Edison laughed in his face. "Tesla," the inventor said, "you don't understand our American humor. The $50,000 was a joke." Edison offered him a raise of $10 a week. For Tesla, this was more than an insult. It was a profound, soul-crushing betrayal. He wasn't just denied money, he was denied respect. His genius was being used, milked, and mocked by his idol, all to prop up the very system he knew was obsolete. He quit immediately, that same day. The man whose mind contained the blueprint for the 20th century was now destitute. His genius was worthless. He had no degree. He had no money. He had no connections, save for the one he had just severed. To survive the brutal winter of 1886, Nikola Tesla, the visionary who had dreamed of cosmic motors, the man who was promised $50,000, was reduced to digging ditches for the Edison Company for $2 a day.
He was a forgotten man. He was, by every measure, a failure. His great rival, Edison, was on top of the world, his DC empire expanding. And Tesla's revolutionary idea, the idea that could have powered the entire planet, was dying with him in a muddy trench in New York City. The world was so close to the light, and yet, it seemed, darkness was winning.
Nikola Tesla was broken, but his idea was not. While digging ditches in the brutal cold and crushing humidity of a New York winter, he was a spectacle. He was not just a laborer, he was a nobleman in rags. His foreman, a man named Alfred S. Brown, was intrigued. This was not a typical immigrant laborer. Tesla spoke with poetic, scientific passion about his alternating current system, about spinning magnetic fields, about a future of light. He spoke of these things to the other laborers, to his foreman, to anyone who would listen. He was a laughingstock, a madman digging a trench. But Brown, a manager for the Western Union Telegraph Company, saw something else. He saw a fire. He saw an intellect that did not belong in a ditch. He knew enough about electricity to understand that this man wasn't just rambling, he was speaking of a different reality. Brown wasn't a physicist, but he knew men, and he knew this immigrant laborer was a prophet. Brown discussed this madman with his associate, Charles F. Peck, a lawyer with a keen eye for new ventures. Peck was skeptical, but Brown was insistent. They arranged to meet Tesla. Imagine the scene, this skeletal, intense visionary, still covered in the mud of his day's labor, explaining a cosmic-level physics concept to two practical, small-time businessmen. He didn't just talk, he performed. He drew diagrams in the dirt, his eyes blazing with the same light he described. Peck and Brown, in a move that would alter the course of history, agreed to take a gamble. They were not J.P. Morgan. They were not titans of industry. They were small-time telegraph men. But they scraped together enough money to form a new company. It was not a grand affair. It was a partnership. They would provide the capital for a laboratory and a patent application, and in return, they would split the profits from any resulting inventions. On April 1st, 1887, the Tesla Electric Company was formed. Tesla was free. He was given a small, stark laboratory at 89 Liberty Street in Manhattan, just a few blocks from Edison's opulent headquarters. The war had officially begun, even if Edison in his castle didn't know it yet. For the first time in his life, Tesla was not fixing another man's machines. He was not a student, not a junior employee, not a ditch digger. He was his own boss. He was unleashed. The period that followed was one of the most explosive bursts of focused, creative genius in human history. He worked with a superhuman furor. He would arrive at the lab in the mid-morning and work until the early hours of the next day. He slept on a cot in the lab, often forgetting to eat, surviving on an almost inhuman nervous energy. He was building the system that had existed, fully formed in his mind, for 5 years, and it was beautiful. He built his dynamos, the generators that would create the polyphase alternating currents. He built his transformers, the simple, elegant devices that could step up the voltage for transmission and step down the voltage for home use, the very thing Edison's DC could not do. And most importantly, he built his motors. He built the synchronous motor,
which ran at a constant speed, perfectly in time with the heartbeat of the AC generator. But his true masterpiece was the asynchronous induction motor. This was the machine that required no commutator, no brushes, no direct electrical contact with the spinning part, the rotor. It ran on the spinning magnetic field he had seen in the park in Budapest. It was simple, it was cheap to build, it was powerful, and it was virtually maintenance-free. It was the perfect workhorse for a new industrial age.
By the end of 1887, he had built it all. He had filed for the 7 key patents that would form the bedrock of the entire AC system. These patents were arguably the most valuable intellectual property of the modern era. But in the 1880s, investors didn't read patents. They needed to see it. Tesla, a natural showman, designed the ultimate demonstration, his Egg of Columbus. It was pure theater and pure genius. He built a ring of electromagnets, a stator, and laid it flat. In the center, he placed a solid, heavy copper egg. He flipped the switch. The polyphase current surged through the stator, creating his invisible, silent, spinning magnetic field. The heavy copper egg, with no wires touching it, began to wobble. It picked up speed. It began to spin, faster and faster, until it was a blur. And then, as the crowd gasped, the spinning egg defied gravity. It rose up on its own axis and stood perfectly balanced on its end. It looked like magic, but it was physics. It was the same principle as his motor. He had proven in one elegant demonstration that his cosmic field was real. News of the madman from Liberty Street began to spread. The man with the spinning egg, the man who claimed to have solved the motor problem that had stumped the world. William A. Anthony, a respected professor of physics at Cornell University, was dispatched to investigate. He went to the lab, a skeptic. He witnessed the system. He tested the motors. He saw the egg. He left a believer. Professor Anthony, in a move that gave Tesla the scientific credibility he desperately needed, agreed to stake his own reputation on this unknown inventor. He arranged for Tesla to give the single most important lecture of his life. On May 16, 1888, Nikola Tesla stood before the American Institute of Electrical Engineers. The room was filled with the most important engineers and financiers in the country. This was Edison's home turf. Tesla was a nervous wreck. He was a poor public speaker. His English was thick with an accent, and he was describing a concept so revolutionary it bordered on science fiction. But as he spoke, his passion took over. He explained the flaws of DC. He laid out the physics of his polyphase system. He described the motors, the generators, the transformers. He was not just proposing an invention. He was revealing a fully formed, perfectly integrated system that would replace everything they had ever known. The lecture, titled "A New System of Alternate Current Motors and Transformers," was a bombshell. It was published in the world's leading electrical journals. The world now knew. The secret was out. The response was electric. Edison dismissed it as impractical and dangerous. Elihu Thomson, another brilliant rival, tried to claim he had invented it first. But one man, reading the journal in Pittsburgh, had a very different reaction. He didn't see a rival. He saw the missing piece.
His name was George Westinghouse. If Edison was the wizard, Westinghouse was the engineer. He was a titan of industry, a self-made man just like Edison. He was practical, shrewd, and perhaps the only man in America who was not afraid of Thomas Edison. He had invented the railroad air brake, a device that made high-speed rail travel possible and had made him fabulously wealthy. He was a man who understood systems, and he had already bet big on alternating current.
Westinghouse, unlike Edison, understood the fatal flaw of DC immediately. He knew that long-distance transmission was the future. He had already bought the US patents for an early, flawed AC system from Gillard and Gibbs. He had hired a brilliant young engineer, William Stanley Jr., to perfect it. In 1886, Stanley had successfully used the Gillard-Gibbs system to light the streets of Great Barrington, Massachusetts. It worked. They could step up and step down the voltage. They could transmit power. But they were stuck. Their system was a serious system, and it was deeply flawed. More importantly, it had no motor. It could power a light bulb, but it couldn't power a factory. It couldn't run a streetcar. It couldn't power a sewing machine. Without a practical, efficient AC motor, Westinghouse's entire investment was incomplete. It was a novelty, not a revolution. His engineers told him it was impossible. They said a commercial AC motor couldn't be built. And then, in May 1888, they read Tesla's lecture. Westinghouse's world stopped. He read the paper and he understood. This was the key. This obscure immigrant wasn't just building a motor. He was building a system, a polyphase system, the perfect system. He traveled to Tesla's lab immediately. The meeting was a perfect contrast to the one with Edison. Edison, the short, deaf, gruff tinkerer, had mocked Tesla. Westinghouse, the tall, patrician, powerful industrialist, treated him as an equal. He was a man who saw the big picture. He didn't care about the poetry or the visions. He cared about the system. Tesla demonstrated his motors. He showed him the egg of Columbus. Westinghouse, a man who had seen it all, was stunned. He knew in that instant that the future was not in Edison's DC. It was right here, in this small, grimy lab. He didn't just want to buy the patents. He wanted the man. He wanted Tesla to come to Pittsburgh and help him build this new world. He made an offer that would eclipse Edison's betrayal. The exact numbers are debated, but the deal was legendary. Westinghouse bought the 7 core patents for Tesla's polyphase system. The deal included $20,000 in cash, about $600,000 today, $50,000 in stock in the Westinghouse Corporation, and, most importantly, a royalty, $2.50 for every single horsepower of AC electricity sold in North America under those patents. It was a deal that, if honored, would make Nikola Tesla the richest man in the world. He was no longer a ditch digger. He was a kingmaker. Tesla accepted. He moved to Pittsburgh to work alongside Westinghouse's engineers. The battle line was drawn. On one side, Edison, J.P. Morgan, and Direct Current, D.C., the established brute force power of the New York financial establishment, an empire built on a 1-mile radius. On the other, Tesla, Westinghouse, and alternating current, AC, the elegant, revolutionary, and now fully funded technology of the future, a system that could power a continent. Edison heard the news, and he was not just concerned, he was furious. He didn't see a rival, he saw a threat to his entire reality. He saw a man he had mocked, a man he had cheated, now backed by his greatest competitor. The war of the currents was about to become a war to the death. We are at a critical turning point. The battle is set, but the weapons haven't been drawn. How does a man like Edison, a public hero, fight back? He's about to turn from an inventor into a propagandist, and the results will be bloody. This story is more than just history. It's a lesson in how technology, media, and corporate power collide. If you're finding this battle as fascinating as we do, hit that subscribe button right now. You're supporting our deep dives into the moments that truly defined our modern world. Okay, the stage is set. Edison is cornered, and a cornered animal is the most dangerous. Thomas Edison was not just an inventor, he was an empire. And empires are not built on genius alone. They are built on control. He saw the Tesla-Westinghouse alliance not as competition, but as an existential threat. He saw his vast DC infrastructure, his patents, his entire legacy turning to rust. So he did what empires always do when threatened. He went to war. But this was a new kind of war. It wasn't fought on a battlefield, but in courtrooms and in headlines. It was a two-pronged attack, a legal war to drain Westinghouse financially, and a propaganda war to poison the public mind. The goal was simple and brutal, to equate alternating current with death. Edison launched the most vicious smear campaign in the history of technology. He didn't do it himself. He was smart enough to keep his own hands clean. Instead, he funded a self-proclaimed expert, a New York electrical engineer named Harold P. Brown. Brown, secretly backed by Edison, began a public crusade to expose the dangers of AC. He wrote sensational letters to newspapers, claiming the high-voltage AC wires running through cities were a lethal menace and unhumane. But reading wasn't enough. Edison knew the public needed a show. At Edison's lab in West Orange, Brown set up a circus of the macabre. He invited reporters and city officials to experiments. He began by paying local boys 25 cents for every stray dog or cat they could capture. In front of the horrified crowd, Brown would bring a dog onto a metal plate, hooking electrodes to it. First, he would send 1,000 volts of Edison's DC current through it. The dog would yelp, seize, but live. Then, Brown would announce he was switching to Westinghouse's deadly AC current. He needed only 300 volts. The animal died instantly. Reporters wrote down every grisly detail. Brown went on tour, publicly slaughtering animals. He killed dozens of dogs, calves, and even a worn-out horse. Each death was meticulously reported in the press with one clear message: AC kills. To make sure the public knew who was responsible, they coined a new verb, to Westinghouse, a new slang term for being electrocuted to death by alternating current. Westinghouse was horrified. He was a respectable industrialist, not a showman. He wrote furious letters to the papers, denouncing the tactics as brutal and un-American. He begged Edison to stop.
He pleaded, "I believe I can find better uses for my generators than killing animals." But Edison was just getting started. He had a final master stroke of dark propaganda. If he could prove AC was the ultimate killer, he could win. He just needed the ultimate stage. At the same time, New York State was desperately searching for a more humane method of execution to replace hanging, which was often a slow, botched, gruesome affair. Edison saw his chance. Behind the scenes, he and Harold Brown began a secret campaign. They lobbied state officials, recommending their competitor's system, alternating current, as the perfect tool for killing a man. The state of New York agreed. They commissioned Harold Brown to design the first electric chair. And to make sure the message was clear, Brown secretly acquired a used Westinghouse generator. Westinghouse was trapped. He funded thousands of dollars in lawsuits, trying to stop the prison from using his name or his equipment for such a vile purpose. He lost. He couldn't fight it without looking like he was protecting a convicted murderer. On August 6, 1890, a convicted murderer named William Kemmler was strapped into the chair. The execution was a disaster, a horror show.
The first jolt of AC, lasting 17 seconds, did not kill Kemmler. He was scorched but breathing. The room filled with the smell of burning flesh. Witnesses fainted. They had to recharge the generator and send the current through a second time. This time, Kemmler smoked. It was a torturous, gruesome spectacle. And the next day, the headlines were exactly what Edison wanted. The press, fed by Edison's team, didn't blame the executioners or the state. They screamed, "Alternating current kills Kemmler. Kemmler's horrible death." The association was sealed in the public's mind. AC was the executioner's current. DC was the safe current. Edison had won the propaganda war. He had dragged Tesla's elegant vision through the mud. Westinghouse's company was reeling. Investors were pulling out. The entire AC revolution was on the brink of collapse. But the war wasn't just in the headlines. It was in the courts. While the smear campaign raged, Edison's company now merged with rivals to become the behemoth Edison General Electric, launched a crippling legal war against Westinghouse. They filed dozens of patent infringement lawsuits against Westinghouse. The goal wasn't to win every suit. The goal was attrition. The goal was to force Westinghouse to spend millions on lawyers, draining his capital until he had nothing left to fight with. Westinghouse was fighting on two fronts, a PR war for the public and a legal war for survival. He spent over $300,000, nearly $10 million today, on lawyers alone. His company was bleeding money. And then the final prize emerged, the battle that would decide it all. In 1893, the world was coming to Chicago, the Columbian Exposition, the World's Fair. It was to be a celebration of the 400th anniversary of Columbus's arrival. It was a signal to the world that America had arrived. It was to be the greatest spectacle in human history. A brand new white city, a magnificent neoclassical metropolis built from scratch on the shores of Lake Michigan. And it had to be lit. This was the final battle. The contract to light the fair was a battle for the soul of the 20th century. Whoever won this contract won the War of the Currents. Edison's company, General Electric, now a virtual monopoly backed by all of J.P. Morgan's money, felt certain of victory. They submitted their bid using their DC system. The cost?
astronomical. They proposed a costly, cumbersome, decentralized network of DC power stations. Then, Westinghouse, still bleeding from Edison's attacks, made the gamble of his life. His investors were begging him to fold. He was on the verge of personal bankruptcy, but he knew this was his last chance. He submitted his bid using Tesla's polyphase AC system. He proposed a single, elegant, efficient, centralized system, and his price was a fraction of GE's. Some reports say GE's bid was nearly $1.7 million. Westinghouse's was just $399,000. He wasn't just bidding to win, he was bidding to survive. He was making almost no profit on the deal. The Fair Committee, despite their fear of the AC menace Edison had created, could not ignore the numbers. They were stunned by the efficiency and low cost of the AC system.
The contract was awarded to Westinghouse. Edison and General Electric were apoplectic. They had lost, but they decided on one last, spiteful act of sabotage. GE filed a lawsuit claiming that Edison's own basic patent on the incandescent light bulb meant that Westinghouse could not use any light bulbs to light the fair. They had delivered a last-minute killing blow. They refused to sell Westinghouse any of their bulbs. Westinghouse had won the contract, but now he had nothing to light it with. He had the generators, he had the wires, but he had no bulbs. The fair was set to open in less than a year. He was trapped. Again, they had underestimated their rival. Westinghouse gathered his engineers. He gave them an impossible task: invent a brand new light bulb that did not violate Edison's patents and manufacture 250,000 of them in months. They did it. His engineers created the stopper bulb. It used a two-piece design, a glass stopper, and had none of the elements of Edison's patent. It was less efficient, it was more fragile, but it worked. They built a makeshift light bulb factory, and in a frantic race against time, they manufactured 250,000 bulbs. The night of May 1st, 1893 arrived. Opening night. Hundreds of thousands of people gathered in the White City, including the President of the United States, Grover Cleveland. The city was dark. President Cleveland placed his hand on a single, large, ornate golden telegraph key. He pressed the button, and in an instant, 100,000 stopper bulbs flared to life. It was not a city. It was a sea of light. It was breathtaking. It was brighter than Paris. It was brighter than anything anyone had ever seen. It was so bright that astronomers hundreds of miles away complained it was polluting the night sky. People wept. They cheered. It was a moment of pure technological transcendence. And it was all powered by Tesla's AC system. In the Hall of Machinery, a row of 12 2,000 horsepower polyphase generators, the beasts as they were called, spun quietly, perfectly, powering the miracle. The propaganda, the fear, the electric chair, it all burned away in that light. 27 million people came to the fair. They didn't just see the future, they walked in it. The world had seen the truth. The war was over. And just to prove it, one final contract was awarded. The contract to harness the power of Niagara Falls. Again, GE and Westinghouse went head to head, but this time there was no contest. The Chicago Fair had proven AC's superiority. The contract was awarded to Westinghouse and Tesla. On November 16, 1896, switches were thrown at Niagara, and for the first time, the lights of Buffalo, New York, 26 miles away, flickered to life. Tesla's dream, Edison's fatal flaw, it was done. The impossible distance had been bridged. The power of a waterfall was now lighting a city. The modern world had officially begun. The victory at Niagara Falls was absolute. It wasn't just a contract, it was an obituary for Edison's DC system. The AC system, powered by Tesla's vision and backed by Westinghouse's resilience, spread across the globe with unstoppable speed. It became the operating system for the 20th century. Like the Roman aqueducts brought water to ancient cities, AC lines brought power to modern civilization. It lit homes and turned the motors of factories. It powered streetcars, electrified farms, and transformed manual labor into mass production. The second industrial revolution exploded, and it was fueled entirely by alternating current. Cities grew tall, skyscrapers built of steel and lit by wire. Human productivity exploded. The world became smaller, faster, and brighter, all because of a war won and a forbidden idea that turned out to be the truth. The legacy of the war was set, but what of the men who fought it? Thomas Alva Edison, the empire builder, did what empires do. He adapted. He lost the war, but he didn't lose his kingdom. When the powerful financier J.P. Morgan engineered a merger of Edison's company with a smaller rival, he created a new behemoth. That new company was named General Electric. J.P. Morgan's first act as its head? He had the name Edison purged from the company. The wizard was cast out of his own kingdom, sidelined by the very financiers who had backed him. And here is Edison's final irony. General Electric, the company built on his foundation, immediately abandoned the fight against AC. They saw the futility. They adopted Tesla's system and began mass-producing AC generators and motors. Edison's own company became the greatest champion of the technology he had tried to destroy. Edison himself, wealthy but bitter, quietly pivoted. He focused on other projects, iron ore mining, cement, and his new passion, motion pictures. He lived on as an American icon, a saint of innovation, and his death in 1931 was mourned by the nation. History, written by the financial victors, largely glossed over his villainous role in his greatest war. George Westinghouse, the industrialist who made the future possible, paid a heavy price for his victory. The war with Edison had nearly bankrupted him. He had survived, but with deep financial scars. And then, in 1907, the market crashed. The panic of 1907 ripped through Wall Street. Credit dried up. Investors panicked. Westinghouse's company, over-levered, was caught insolvent. He was on the brink of ruin. To save his company, he was forced to seek new investors and restructure. The bankers of Wall Street, the same men who had backed Edison, now came to Westinghouse's rescue. But they had a condition. They looked at the books and saw one massive, unsustainable liability that was draining the life out of the company. It wasn't a loan. It was a contract. Nikola Tesla's royalty contract. And Nikola Tesla, the poet, the prophet, the man who had seen the future,
He was the war's greatest casualty. He had won, technically, historically. The entire planet was now running on his system, and by the terms of his contract, $2.50 per horsepower, he was on his way to becoming the richest man in the world. He would have been the first billionaire. But when George Westinghouse, the one man who had believed in him, the man who had bet everything on him, came to him in desperation, Tesla was faced with a choice. Westinghouse explained the situation. The bankers, some say J.P. Morgan himself, were applying pressure. They would not save the company unless this massive royalty debt was eliminated. The company would fold. Their AC legacy would be shattered. The war, won on the technological battlefield, would be lost at the financial bargaining table. The bankers wanted Tesla to accept a one-time buyout, a fraction of the contract's worth. Tesla in that moment saw the bigger picture. He didn't care about money. He never had. He cared about the system. He cared about the future. In a grand gesture of gratitude and sacrifice, he told Westinghouse, "You have been my friend. You were the only one who believed in me. You have been brave enough to back me. I will not have you ruined." Tesla went to the contract, the billion-dollar contract, and he tore it up. He ripped up his royalties. He surrendered the fortune that was his. He accepted a one-time payment, reportedly around $216,000, for the patents that were powering the planet. He gave up a fortune to save the system. It was a noble act, and it was his financial ruin. Westinghouse saved his company, but not for long. The bankers restructured, and just like Edison, Westinghouse was eventually forced from his leadership role. He lost control of the empire he had built. He died a few years later, a man tired from the fight. And Tesla, who had given it all away, was now alone. He took his small payment and chased even grander dreams. He became obsessed with wireless power transmission. He believed he could turn the Earth itself into a giant generator, sending free, unlimited energy to anyone, anywhere in the world. He convinced J.P. Morgan, the same man who had funded Edison and taken over Westinghouse, to finance a new project, a massive tower at Wardenclyffe, Long Island. Morgan thought he was investing in a transatlantic radio system to compete with Marconi. But Tesla wasn't just building a radio. He was building a world-changing weapon. He believed his tower could light the sky, create artificial lightning, and power the globe. When Morgan realized Tesla's true intent, to provide free energy, he immediately pulled his funding. How could you meter free energy? How could you profit from it? The project collapsed. Wardenclyffe became Tesla's greatest monument, a giant skeleton of a future that never arrived. Tesla spent the rest of his life as a recluse, living in a series of New York hotels, growing increasingly eccentric and detached from reality. He was a man from the future, trapped in the present. He talked to pigeons. He claimed to receive signals from Mars. He announced increasingly bizarre inventions, death rays, earthquake machines. The world that had once laughed at his idea of AC now laughed at the man himself. On January 7, 1943, he was found dead at age 86, alone in room 3327 of the Hotel New Yorker, in debt, virtually penniless.
The man who lit the world died in the dark. He won the war for the world,
but he lost everything for himself. It seems like a clean end to the story. AC won, DC lost. Tesla was the tragic hero, Edison the flawed villain. But the War of the Currents has a secret epilogue, a sixth act. The battle never really ended. In fact, it's happening right now, in your hand, on your desk, and on your roof. Look at our world today, the 21st century. That smartphone in your pocket? Its battery runs on DC. That laptop you're working on, the processor, the memory, the screen, all DC. Solar panels? They create DC. Electric cars? They run on DC batteries. The massive data centers that power the internet, that power this very video, they are massive consumers of DC. Every time you plug in one of these devices, that little brick on the cord isn't just a plug, it's a converter. Its sole purpose is to take the high-voltage AC from Tesla's grid and turn it back into the low-voltage DC of Edison's original system. For 100 years, AC was king, but for the last 30, with the digital revolution, we have become a DC-hungry civilization. We live in an AC world, but we use a DC world. And here is the final beautiful irony. Remember Edison's fatal flaw, that DC couldn't travel more than a mile? Well, 130 years later, with the invention of modern power electronics, we solved that problem. Today, for moving massive amounts of power over extreme distances, across continents or under oceans, the most efficient way to do it, with the least energy loss, is high-voltage direct current, HVDC. Edison's idea, it turns out, was just 100 years ahead of its time. The war was never truly about AC versus DC. It was never Tesla versus Edison. It was a war about a question. What is the best way to power our future? And the answer, after 130 years of battle, is beautifully complex. The answer is both. We use Tesla's AC to move power efficiently to our cities, and we use Edison's DC to power the delicate technology inside our homes. It is a hybrid system, a synthesis. It took two of the greatest minds in history, locked in a brutal war, to give us the future. One to build the artery, and one to build the heart. The story of technology is never finished. What do you think is the next war of the currents? Is it AI? Is it genetic engineering? Or is it the new war between the centralized grid and decentralized at-home power? Let us know your thoughts in the comments below. And if you want to understand the next great battle that will define our future, be sure to subscribe and click the notification bell.